Good afternoon. This is Kathi Fleck with Growth Team Strategies, filling in for Doug Howard, our president. We're here to talk about selling the dream and preparing for the future, selling the dream and moving on. So there's a lot of things we think about when we're preparing for selling our business. And since it's usually the first time we've ever done it, we really don't know what hurdles we're going to come across. So I have Matt Helminiak with us today, and he is also has sold a business and supports Growth Team Strategies. We work together on several projects. So Matt, how are you doing today?
Doing wonderful. Thank you.
Good. So we're going to talk today about how do you prepare the team or not prepare the team for selling the business. So when you get into that transition, there's a lot of different philosophies on it. Some people bring the team in on it, and they're all working together. Others try to keep that quiet, and maybe they do or they don't. But we want to talk today about what's the best structure or ideas on that. So what are your thoughts, Matt?
In our experience, as part of the due diligence process, we had, for sure, the accounting bookkeeping people had to be on board with it. We had to explain it because a lot of financial documents were getting asked for and recasting things and more information they needed. So they were the only people that we told. Our salespeople, back office staff, field installers, none of them knew. And the reason we made that decision was because we wanted to sell a business that was as close to what it was before afterwards. So you want to, in our case, we didn't want to tell everybody what was happening because you don't want people getting worried and concerned, because there's a natural fear that if a company's going to get sold, they're going to make changes. So a lot of people that naturally are not fans of change, if they think that the company is going to be sold at some point, are going to start looking for somewhere else to go where they feel like they have more control. So what we didn't want is to have a whole bunch of people get cold feet and leave. So we did not tell everybody. Other people will have an entirely different philosophy on that and tell everybody all along the way. It all matters on how much your people trust you and how good you are at keeping your word. So if you're making commitments to people throughout the process, you got to make sure that whatever entity is running the show after the sale keeps those promises. You don't want to say, look, they're not going to change our insurance, they're not going to change our the materials that we buy, or whatever it is, whatever commitment you're making. If you make a promise, you have to make sure that the new company is going to deliver on that promise. Otherwise, your credibility is out the window. So in our case, we just didn't tell anybody other than the accounting people what was going on. So we didn't have that worry of here's a list of all the promises that we made to people. Please don't make us liars. So it worked out for us. But not to say that you couldn't have a different way of doing it and have everybody as part of the process the whole way through. But in our case, we decided that we're going to not have this be a public spectacle, and we're going to do this in a little quiet. It's hard, though, because
it is.
You're going to, at some point, have to tell people. And you don't know how people are going to respond or react. Because in our case, some of the people had worked with us for 20 years. And they built their lives around this business. And now one day it's different. The company that they worked for their entire career is now different. So it's a big risk, but
it is. I did not tell my staff. I had a much smaller company, and I was concerned too that people would leave or that they would tell our clients, and then I wouldn't get jobs from the in the remodeling world, or our subs would decide not to work with us or maybe do a shoddy job. So it's just kind of, to me, a need to know. And so I was asking myself, well, why would they need to know? There's really no impact on them at this point. And what if it doesn't sell? And what if it continues as it is? So to me, it was more as a need to know. And so I did involve my bookkeeper because, like you, with all the different financials we had to keep providing, it was kind of immediate access. And then working with Doug as a coach, he knew, but I didn't tell any of my other peers from remodeling organizations or anybody, because I just figured they didn't really need to know, and I wasn't going to get anything out of it. But I do think there are many companies who have maybe a senior staff or a team of people, and they know that at some point this person wants to sell and retire. And I know some of my remodeling peers do that, where they'll bring the whole group in or let them know. And then they have that succession plan in place, maybe to sell outside, maybe to pass it down to a son or a daughter or family member, maybe to sell to the employees. So there's different approaches there that might make a better difference if the team is involved.
And if you do this right and you're structuring your business, so the work we do with growth teams is, what do you do if you think that you're going to want to sell at some point? What changes should you make now to maximize what you're going to get out of a sale? So you're going to run your business differently if you think that 3 or 4 years from now you might sell. So in our case, we weren't thinking too far out. So I didn't structure the business differently. Like, if I had to do it all over again, I would have a different setup of our staff. So I did a whole lot of stuff myself. I would, believe it or not, plow the snow. I was doing sales, production. I did a whole lot of stuff myself. That, when you go to value a company, actually makes you less valuable because you're not part of the sale. Therefore, they're going to have to get all that stuff done some other way. So when somebody's valuing your company, the more stuff that the owner's doing themselves, the harder it is to put a good value on that. So that's a different philosophy than I ran the business. So the advice I would give to somebody else is, you need to start doing things now in anticipation of a sale down the road. And then bringing it back to what we were talking about, whether you tell the staff or not, if you run the business that way all along, it's not that big shock when somebody else comes in, because you've set the business up in the right way so that there are systems and people in place that are already doing the things that you don't want to be doing or wouldn't be doing after the sale. So that jarring transition doesn't happen if you did it right. So if you didn't do it right and you were doing too much stuff yourself, you take you out of the picture, that forces a whole lot of change that otherwise wouldn't happen. So if you're doing it right, the best thing you can do, not just for your business valuation, but for your business continuation, is to structure it and run it like you're going to sell it a couple of years from now. And that ends up making the transition a whole lot smoother.
It does. I think it is a lot smoother. And that was the same. I wore many, many hats within the business, and that was a concern that even the broker and I talked about. Everybody is that you are the business, Kathi. And so what happens at that point when you do want to sell it? So I just said, I'm going to have to find somebody who's okay with that. So, and it did work out, but it was always a concern that, well, gee, I might not be able to sell the business. So I think one message here is that no matter what business owners are thinking, you just have to be prepared for it. So at least you know what outcomes you might run into. And if you're not able to, or financially, or don't have enough of the staff on board in order to be able to fill those slots so that you can pretty much just step away, then you're just going to have to prepare for either maybe making a little bit less money, or taking a little bit longer, or finding the right person to buy the business or conglomerate.
And there's a lot of people now in the MBA world that an attractive buyout is stepping into a business like yours and mine, where it's already run and the owner's on site every day, and you're taking the place of that owner. So getting in and being a part of the business, it's a different process. So if you don't know anything about the business, there's going to be a learning transition point where you're going to have to come in and the owner is going to have to teach you how to do it and how to run it. So if it's structured so that it is very dependent on you, it's a different kind of buyer that might come in. But if you find the right buyer that wants to come in and take your place, and sometimes that's a manager that you have, or a family member, or a complete stranger, but wants to come in and just take you out, put them in, and then run it the same way, you can have a very successful exit. A lot of times those are somewhat owner financed, where you're slowly selling the business instead of getting a single check and walking away. But if that's what it takes to get more in the long run, it's not a bad way to structure a deal.
No. And I know when I was mine was on the market, there were several different approaches that came to me. And of course, I put mine on the market the beginning of COVID. So I had to ride out some of 2020, well, all of 2020, and then 21 started opening up a little bit. So I don't know what would have happened under normal circumstances. But there were several opportunities that could have come, well, did come to me, but I didn't take them because they really weren't what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to partner with somebody else coming in. I wanted to sell and exit. So I think all of those are really good ways of looking at it so that you can decide. So my thinking on all of this is if you put all that into a business, all the risk and the responsibility, you should get the reward too, and to sell it rather than just walk away or hand it over to somebody, then you should have some of that. I just think it's important to have some benefit for it, regardless of what you want to do with your proceeds.
Yeah, the worst thing is if you've spent all that time building something and you just lock the doors and turn the lights off and that's
I
the
know,
end
I
of it.
hate to see that. I hate to see that.
It
But
happens, but
I think a lot of people though don't really think about selling their business until they are really ready to sell it. And then it's hard to make that transition. So part of what we do at growth teams is to help people get through that, prepare for it, to face the uncertainties that they're going to have, and then prepare themselves mentally for when they are finished. Because we put a lot of our time and energy into our business, and then what do we do when we retire? You know, we have to find other outlets for us. So
when we sold, my dad retired the day after the sale, and he came to work for 4 more years.
oh wow.
Every day, got dressed up, came to work, was back there in his office for 4 years because he had nothing better to do. His identity, his entire life was built up in this business. It was his purpose. It was his reason for existing. And when that goes away, luckily I was still here and didn't need the office yet. So I let him come to work every day. And it was great to have him around because for us, it was like anytime you had a question, you could go and ask him. It was like having a business consultant on site that you could just go and ask anything you wanted. So we loved it. But at a certain point, I said to him, it's been 4 years now that you're still coming to work. What are you doing? Like, at what point are you going to retire?
And did he get paid?
No, we weren't paying him. And that was the other thing. I said, you've been here for 4 years. We haven't paid you in 4 years. And what he said was, if you people would leave me alone and I could get caught up, I could leave. But he wasn't in his, but what that meant was that was his feeling purpose and meaning in life was he felt like when we would go back there and ask him a question, that was the biggest gift we could give him because it made him feel needed and important and valued. And so for us, it was great to have him, but it also for him, it was great to be wanted and be needed.
Oh yeah, I know.
And if he would have walked away and the day that he sold would have never come back, I don't know if he'd still be alive. I don't know if he could have done it because that a piece of you just your reason for being just goes away.
Yeah, so you have to find something else.
It's hard.
It is very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's good advice. I think the other part is it's interesting to see how your dad stayed on and got dressed up and came in, didn't earn a paycheck, but felt good about himself and was able to contribute. So, but it's good to prepare for that transition. So I just think whatever it is that we're going to be doing afterwards, maybe bring some of that in as we're ending our career so that we can have some good transition in place. So,
and it's great advice to a buyer too. If you're going to buy a business and the owner that you're buying from, you can maintain a relationship with that person, that's great. And because they did build this thing, they did create this. And if you can keep a good relationship with them, it helps with your retaining your customers. It helps with retaining the people. It also sends a good signal that you're a good human being. Like if you can buy a business and still have a good relationship with the person that sold it to you, that works out for everybody. And it's not easy for everybody to do it because, like we said before, the owner is going to do things differently than you would do it. So you're going to have disagreements over how you're doing certain things. That's fine, and you can have your disagreements. But if you can maintain that relationship with the previous owners, it benefits everybody. Yeah, and it makes them feel needed. So it makes you a better business. It makes the business more valuable, and it helps you retain the people and the customers. So I would advise people, if at all possible, keep the owners happy and around, and call them when you need stuff. Like if you need advice, even if you don't need advice, just call them anyway and ask them questions. What would you do? Make them
Yeah.
feel good.
Yeah, they probably would feel good. Well, thank you, Matt. It's really helpful to hear other businesses dealing with issues that are involved with selling the business. So thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Selling the Dream podcast, starring Doug Howard and Kathi Fleck. Both Doug and Kathi have built and sold successful businesses and hope this podcast will help other small business owners do the same. Tune in every week to hear more tips for increasing the value of your company so you get the highest return for your years of hard work when it comes time to sell or transition your business. Can't wait till next week? Check out our website for more information at www.growththemes.com.